Hello, today we're going to talk about the novel George by Gino and why this is such an important book to have in school libraries and for students in the middle years to have access to this book. So I'd like to start off with some statistics. If you look at the numbers of different mental health issues that are affecting our LGBTQ young people, it's pretty devastating. You look at 77% of LGBTQ teenagers have felt depressed or down over the past week. Only 26% say they always feel safe in their school classrooms, and just 5% say that all their teachers and school staff are supportive of LGBTQ people. More than half of transgender male teens who participated in the survey reported attempting suicide in their lifetime, while 29.9% of transgender female teens said they have also attempted suicide. And among non-binary youth, 41.8% of respondents state that they have attempted suicide at some point in their lives. This is all from a survey done by the Human Rights Campaign for LGBTQ teenagers in the last couple of years. So you can see that there's a mental health crisis amongst our LGBTQ teenagers that are especially devastating for transgender children. So in response, the ALA, American Library Association, has been very active in advocating for the rights of transgender people and transgender children. So there's a statement that ALA President Julie Todaro made in response to some of the current administration's policy, anti-LGBT, especially anti-trans policies that have emerged. And she said that all of its members, librarians, and professionals are committed to diversity, inclusiveness, and mutual respect for human beings, and we will work tirelessly to ensure full representation of all members of society. So, and then she goes on to say that we stand with our transgender members, colleagues, families, and friends. One other thing that the ALA has done is avoided planning conferences in states that have bathroom bills or stringent anti-trans types of bills that laws that have negatively affected the quality of life of trans and LGBTQ members. And I believe North Carolina was one where there was an ALA conference scheduled there, and they decided to change after a bathroom bill was passed by the state legislature. So in terms of getting back to our main subject, in terms of the novel George, written by Gino, it's been listed as one of the most frequently banned books for middle years children in the last several years. And the reasons for banning this book is kind of like, kind of pulled together the main reasons from various parts of the country that ALA found that there's a lot of references to sexuality. There's one mention of child clearing the mother's browsing history, so they wouldn't know what they've been looking at. There was some discussion of actually doing the physical gender transition using hormones, mentioning dirty magazines, describing the male anatomy. At one point, George is in the bathtub and is like ashamed of having to look at his male parts. But these are all very brief references. I read the book. I felt that they added some realism to the topic, but Gino does not dwell on these at all. They're very brief. You'd have to be intentionally going to look for them in order to find these references. So the author themselves says that this is really just a decoy. These reasons for kind of cherry picking, what they call problematic sexual elements in this book is really just a decoy for discomfort about a book about a transgender child. So the quote that from the authors, one would have to search through the whole book to find a few vague references, which I agree. Like I did not get an impression. Like I felt that it was mostly age appropriate, and the stuff that was not age appropriate, I feel like most children would probably skip over. It's not like the author dwells on these things, but they're not anything that's raised huge red flags when I read them. And if you're really looking, there are a few vague references according to the author, but the reason you're looking is because you're afraid about the trans issue. So I agree. I felt like the trans issue, because it is the issue that's most important to the theme of the book, it's the one that I think people find most problematic, but they don't want to seem politically incorrect by attacking that directly. So instead, they're looking for elements that they can point to as being age inappropriate. So that being a problem, you look at reasoning for having books like George in the library. And the blogger Ellen O, who's also a children's book writer, said that very directly, queer kids are killing themselves for being different, and we need greater representation to make them feel less alone. And so I'll get to this later, but a book like George could literally save a life. It's the kind of thing that a child could read and see themselves in it and take a lot of solace and comfort in that representation. So how does it serve transgender youth? Well, I just said, there's the representation issue. There's the idea that you're reading a story that resembles something that you yourself have gone through, even though it doesn't happen to many people. You might not know anyone else in your own life who is transgender, but having that book gives you that sense of connection. You are not alone. There are other young people experiencing what you are experiencing, even though you might not know who they are. They might be in another school or another city or another state. There are people who will support you. So the book is a lot about finding those allies, and George ends up, beginning the transition process and becoming Melissa. And her best friend, Kelly, is the one who really gives her that emotional support and that encouragement that's so crucial to help her make those first steps in the direction of transitioning. So I found that very powerful. And I think that myself being a cisgender male, straight male, is, reading this, I really felt like, as I was reading it, I felt my heart growing and I felt my sense of empathy. I know a lot about trans issues because my wife has worked with the LGBTQ community through her work, and I've had trans students, but this book really hit home for me because hearing that narrative told in such great detail, you really were able to connect with George. So I did want to bring up one issue. I was kind of reading on Goodreads, mostly positive reviews, but one person did raise the issue that the book still does traffic in gender stereotypes because George, while transitioning, her idea of being a girl is wearing makeup and dresses and these very kind of stereotypical feminine behaviors. So and of course acting as a female character in the school play, which was Charlotte's Web. She wanted to be Charlotte. So that was one comment that was talking about, well, it was very important to transgender people. We have to be aware that that there are some issues with it, and that there are gender stereotypes that are being promoted. And so, but even so, I like books that have those kinds of flaws in them because it makes rich areas for discussion. And I would not hesitate to teach this to a middle years class. I think it would be highly engaging to students. So finally, I just want to reiterate the fact that having this kind of representation in library collections could be a matter of life and death. It could save lives, and we need more of it. And we need more stories like this, and having access to students, to give students access to more stories like this. Thank you.